Your overhead story channel, let's go listening.
I wasn't supposed to be home that night. We'd been called out for a search and rescue on Mount Hood. 2 hikers had gone off trail near Mirror Lake, and a snowstorm rolled in sooner than expected. We found them quicker than usual, which was lucky for them and just plain strange for us. The storm chased us off the mountain early, forced us to call it. A whiteout like that doesn't play nice. Nobody argues with a blizzard. By the time I pulled into our driveway in Bend, it was just after 9 p.m. The neighborhood was blanketed in snow, soft and untouched, the way it gets when the world forgets to move. The porch light was glowing. That part felt normal. Everything else didn't. The second I stepped into the house, something hit me. This barely their scent I couldn't place. It wasn't food. It wasn't soap. It was sharper, cleaner. A musky cologne with an edge of citrus, like bergamot or cedarwood. Not mine. I don't even wear cologne unless it's Christmas and Vivian's gotten me something she picked out herself. Whatever this was, it didn't belong to me. I stood in the entryway for a moment, letting my boots melt onto the mat, just listening. The house was quiet. Not eerie quiet, just too still, like someone was holding their breath. I set my pack down and moved into the living room. That's when I saw it. A scarf. Gray. Cashmere looking. Draped over the armrest of the couch like someone had just tossed it there casually. But not carelessly, deliberately, like they meant to come back for it. Vivian doesn't wear scarves like that. Not in the house and not that color. She's all earth tones and knitted wool. This one was smooth, stylish, expensive looking. Definitely not hers. And definitely not mine. I walked around the coffee table slowly, not touching anything, just looking. There were 2 empty coffee mugs on the side table, hers, and another one I didn't recognize. Ours are chipped, faded things with hiking logos and gift shop names. This one was sleek, matte black, like it came from a hotel lobby or a curated boutique. Not a single fingerprint on it. Someone had wiped it down. Upstairs, the hallway light was on. I climbed the steps quietly out of instinct. I've done enough recon in the mountains to know how to move silently. The bedroom door was half open. Our bed was made, but only half. The blanket was folded back on one side, the pillows rumpled, like someone had gotten up in a hurry. Vivian always made the bed tight, even if she was just walking out for groceries. She said it was the one little thing she could control. So seeing it like that stopped me cold. Our nightstand drawer was slightly ajar. Nothing dramatic, but she never left that open. She hated clutter. I stood in the doorway for maybe 30 seconds. I don't know why I didn't call her name. I guess I was trying to put it all together in my head first, like maybe I'd missed a memo. Maybe she had a friend over. Maybe Landon had spilled something and she was cleaning up. Maybe, God, I don't know. But every instinct in me was screaming that something was wrong. When I turned around, she was already coming up the stairs behind me. Vivian stopped halfway up, like she hadn't expected to see me yet. She blinked, then smiled, tight, like her cheeks had to work for it. "You're home early." "Yeah." Storm cut the trip short. We had to turn back. She nodded slowly, glancing toward the bedroom behind me. "Everything okay?" "I was just unpacking." I lied, but it didn't matter. The look she gave me said she already knew I'd seen the scarf. "I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow," she said, brushing a hand over her hair. She was still wearing makeup, lipstick just slightly faded. Not something she did when she was home alone. She wasn't dressed in pajamas either. A fitted sweater and leggings. Casual but curated. Like she was expecting company. "You have someone over?" I asked lightly. Her eyes flicked up, then back down. "No, just me. I had Evan drop by earlier for a quick work thing. We're planning the fundraising auction for the department." My stomach went tight. "Evan?" I tried to sound neutral. I probably failed. "Yeah," she said, voice steady, but something in her throat caught. A little hitch. "He left that scarf. He was only here for a bit. Just coffee and notes. You know." "Right?" I said. I was still looking at her, and I knew she knew it. She moved past me into the bedroom, pulled the blanket straight without saying anything. then walked back toward the door. I was cleaning most of the day. Didn't realize how late it got. I was just going to make some tea. I followed her downstairs. She filled the kettle like nothing was wrong. My mind kept flashing to the scarf, the cologne, the coffee mug, the way the blanket was turned down on just one side like someone had laid in it while she sat downstairs pretending not to hear them breathe. But she didn't flinch. She poured boiling water over a peppermint tea bag and slid a mug across the counter toward me. "Want one?" "Sure," I said, because what else could I say? We sat at the island in silence for a while, steam rising from our mugs. Her fingers tapped the side of hers lightly, like she couldn't decide whether to say something or let the air carry it all away. I let her make the next move. She didn't. Later, when I tucked Landon into bed, I looked at his little nightlight flickering in the corner and thought about how many nights I'd been gone. On climbs, on call-outs, on searches. And how many of those nights she'd spent right here, alone, or not alone. I kissed his forehead, pulled the blankets up to his chin, and walked out of the room. Downstairs, she was already on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had changed. Like there wasn't a crack running straight through the foundation of our life. "Everything okay with him?" she asked, not looking up. "He's asleep," I said. She nodded. I stood there a long time before finally speaking again. "That scarf. It's not one I've seen Evan wear." She looked up at me then, just for a second. "He said it was a gift." "No, that's probably why." Another pause. I waited for her to add something, anything, to fill in the missing pieces. But she didn't. She just looked back at her phone. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, though my throat was already dry. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was home. I felt like I was standing inside a stranger's house. A house filled with my furniture, my family photos, my kids' drawings on the fridge. But the ground beneath my feet, it had shifted. Not enough to fall through yet, but enough that I knew something was broken. And she wasn't going to be the one to say it out loud. That night, long after Vivian had gone to bed, I sat in the living room with nothing but the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the baseboards to keep me company. Landon was asleep. The snow was still falling outside. And me? I couldn't stop replaying everything. You know how sometimes you can't see the full picture until you step far enough back? That was me. That was this moment. Because the scarf, the cologne, and the too perfect explanation were just the latest additions to a trail I hadn't wanted to follow. It started months ago. Little things I brushed off, thinking maybe we were just going through a phase. Every marriage does. Or so I told myself. Vivian used to call me during my rescue shifts. Not often. She knew better than to distract me. But she'd send videos of Landon playing with the dog, or voice messages where she made him say silly things like, "Daddy's the bravest man in the world." That stuff mattered more than she probably knew. On long nights in a tent with the wind howling outside, those messages made me feel tethered to something real. But that stopped. No warning. No explanation. Just a slow fade until I realized I hadn't gotten a video or photo in weeks. When I asked her about it, she gave me this laugh, sharp, like it was silly I even noticed. "I've just been tired," she said. "And Landon's not doing anything new. You'll see it all when you're home." I wanted to believe that. I really did. Then there was the day I called during a break between missions. It was a quick call, maybe 4 minutes. I remember the sun was just coming up over the ridge, and I'd been thinking how beautiful it was. How I wished she could see it too. But when she picked up, she sounded distracted. Her voice was clipped. She told me she was at the salon, getting her hair colored. At the time, I believed her. But now I'm thinking about how quiet it was in the background. No blow dryers, no chatter, just her voice and the kind of echo you get in a room with hardwood floors and not much furniture. There were other signs too. She started taking evening walks. Said it helped her clear her head. I encouraged it. I mean, who was I to criticize someone for needing air? But one night I came home early from a training workshop, and her walk turned into a drive that lasted over an hour. She didn't come back until close to 10. She said she'd taken a long route to listen to her podcast in peace. But she looked startled when she saw me, almost like she wasn't expecting me to be there. That look stuck with me. And then there was Evan. He was new in her office, joined about 6 months back. She mentioned him in passing at first, then more frequently. Evan thinks the auction should have a silent art corner. Evan says we could raise more with a raffle. Evan brought donuts to the morning meeting, always with this soft admiration, like he was some brilliant prodigy sent from above to save her committee from collapse. I laughed it off. I even teased her. You talk about Evan more than you talk about me. She rolled her eyes. Because he's the only one doing any actual work around there. Don't be dramatic. But after a while, I noticed something else. He started showing up in her social media posts. Not tagged, not posed, just lingering in the background. Standing too close. Always half-turned toward her. Like he didn't even notice the camera. Once, I asked, "Is that Evan again?" "Yeah," she said without skipping a beat. "He's everywhere lately." She didn't seem bothered. But I was. Something about the way he looked at her. And maybe the way she never looked at him. Like she was trying too hard not to. I tried not to overthink it. Then there was that phone call. About a month ago, I came home unexpectedly between missions. Vivian was in the kitchen, talking quietly. I walked in through the garage. Didn't even mean to sneak up on her. It just happened. The second she saw me, she ended the call so fast I barely caught the sound of a man's voice on the other end. She smiled, tried to hand me a glass of wine. "Who was that?" I asked. "Just someone from the auction board," she said quickly. "We were talking about getting a permit for the park." I nodded. But the truth is, she didn't look relaxed the rest of the night. She kept checking her phone, like she expected it to ring again and didn't want it to. I should have asked more questions. But the worst part of suspicion isn't the lack of answers. It's the way it turns your memories into knives. Suddenly you start slicing through your own life, wondering what was real and what was just cover. Like when she stopped asking about my overnight missions. She used to want every detail. How cold was it? Did anyone get hurt? Did you rappel again? But now it was just, "Oh, glad you made it back. Landon asked about you." And that was it. Emotionless. Like I was a mechanic returning from a shift. There was even a time, late October, I came back with a knee injury after a rough descent. Not major, just a bad twist and some bruised pride. I was limping, stiff, sore. Vivian saw me come through the door and gave me a peck on the cheek. No hug. No questions. Just, "Did you remember to grab milk?" I did. But man, I wish I hadn't. Now, sitting here alone, the whole past year rearranged itself in my mind like puzzle pieces finally falling into place. Every time she said she was working late, maybe she wasn't. Every weekend when she asked me to take Landon to the park for a few hours so she could clean the house or catch up on work, maybe she was preparing for someone else. Maybe that scarf on the couch wasn't forgotten. Maybe it was left behind like a marker, a flag planted on territory I thought was still mine. And the tremor in her voice when she said Evan's name? It wasn't nerves. It was recognition. She knew I'd heard it. She knew what it meant. The thing that K*LLS you the most is realizing how long you've been a few steps behind. I looked around the living room, the same one we sat in to open Christmas presents. The same couch where Landon watched cartoons every morning before school. The same house we picked out together because it had that family feel. And all of it felt tainted. How much of our life had she shared with him? I didn't have answers, but I had questions now. 1,000 of them. And for the first time, I knew I wasn't crazy. I wasn't insecure. I wasn't imagining things. I was just catching up to the truth. Too late, maybe, but not too late to act. The scarf should have been enough. The shift in her eyes, the way she said Evan's name like it caught in her throat. Any one of those things, taken alone, could have been written off. But when you see the full picture, when the weight of evidence tips past denial, something breaks. Not loud, not explosive. Just a quiet, irreversible snap inside you. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in Landon's room for a while, watching him breathe. His little chest rising and falling. His hand curled around a stuffed raccoon he named Rocket. He slept with it every night, always clutching it tight, like it anchored him to something safe. God, he had no idea. No idea the kind of cracks forming in the foundation of his world. I planned on waiting, on watching, maybe even confronting her directly when I had more solid proof. But the universe didn't give me that choice. It happened just before 10 p.m. I was upstairs brushing my teeth when I noticed movement outside through the corner of the bathroom mirror. Our bedroom window had a clear view of the driveway. Normally, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. It's a quiet street, not much action at that hour. But something made me freeze. There was Vivian, carrying her overnight bag. She moved quickly, quietly, didn't even glance up at the house. She went straight to her car, opened the trunk, tossed the bag in, and climbed into the driver's seat. The engine started without hesitation, and the taillights lit up the white snow like a warning flare. I stood there motionless, toothbrush still in hand. She didn't say goodbye, didn't mention a meeting, didn't even leave a note. By the time I got downstairs, her car was already turning the corner. For a few moments, I just stood there in the empty entryway, heart pounding. Then I heard something else, shuffling upstairs. Landon. I ran back up and found him standing by his window in his pajamas, hair tousled from sleep, his cheeks still warm from bed. "Where's Mommy going?" he asked groggily. I opened my mouth, but I didn't have an answer. "She's probably running an errand," I lied. "She'll be back soon." But Landon wasn't convinced. He climbed into my arms and held on like something inside him already knew. He didn't say anything else, just rested his head against my shoulder, the weight of him both grounding and unbearable. I tucked him back into bed, stayed with him until his breathing evened out again. I didn't leave the room right away. I sat there in the darkness, listening to the wind pick up outside and wondering if it was too late to shield him from what was coming. An hour later, my phone rang. Unknown number. At first, I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. "Mr. Prescott?" a man's voice asked. "Yes. This is Deputy Malden from the Deschutes County Sheriff's Department. Are you the father of Landon Prescott?" My blood ran cold. "Yes," I said, gripping the phone tighter. "Is he okay?" "He's safe," the deputy replied. "But we found him walking alone near Highway 320. He was about 1.5 miles from your home." I didn't hear the rest of the sentence. My knees buckled, and I had to sit down on the stairs. "He said he was looking for his mother," the deputy continued. "Thankfully, a passing driver saw him and called us immediately. He's shaken but uninjured." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had just tucked him in, just sat beside him in the dark. How long was I sitting there before I drifted off? 15 minutes? 30? "I'm on my way," I said. I don't remember grabbing my coat. Don't remember starting the truck. I just remember the lights from the sheriff's department reflecting in the snow as I pulled into the lot. Landon was inside, wrapped in a thermal blanket, sipping hot cocoa from a paper cup. When he saw me, he burst into tears. And I nearly did too. I crouched down, pulled him into my arms, and whispered, "I've got you. I've got you, buddy. You're okay." But he shook his head. "I was scared," he said between sobs. "I thought Mommy was lost." I held him tighter. "You don't have to look for her again. Ever. That's not your job." The drive home was quiet. I glanced at him through the rearview mirror, and all I could think was, this isn't just about broken trust anymore. This is about danger, about negligence, about someone choosing themselves over their child, about walking away and not even checking to see if the door had locked behind them. Vivian didn't come home that night. She didn't call, didn't text. She returned the next morning, just after 9, like she'd gone out for groceries or coffee. Her keys jingled as she unlocked the door. She stepped inside with that same curated calm she always wore, until she saw me sitting on the couch with Landon beside me. He was playing with Legos, still wearing his pajamas, quiet. But when he looked up and saw her, he didn't run to her. He just blinked and went back to building a tower. She froze. "Hey," she said casually, dropping her purse by the door. "Didn't expect you guys to be up this early." "You weren't here," I said simply. She blinked. "I told you. I had that last-minute meeting. You didn't tell me anything, I interrupted. You left. 10 p.m. with your bag. And Landon saw you go. Her face paled. He walked out of the house looking for you? I continued, voice low and steady. By himself. In the snow. The sheriff's department found him on the side of the highway. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I stood up, walked past her toward the door. I need air, I said. Take care of him. She didn't stop me. I didn't get far. Just around the side of the house, to where her car was parked. The snow on the roof hadn't fully melted yet. I opened the door, glanced around the front seat, then the glove compartment. Nothing. Then I checked the back. There it was. A small box wedged under the seat. I pulled it out. 2 plastic wine cups, a half-empty bottle of Pinot Noir, and a torn condom wrapper. My hand tightened around the box. I felt heat rising in my face. Not rage, something colder than that. Like stepping through ice water. I didn't go back inside right away. I leaned against the porch railing, trying to steady my breath, gripping that box like it could somehow give me answers. Didn't, but it gave me the truth. Irrefutable. Plain. She wasn't just slipping away emotionally. She was physically gone. She had crossed the line. And worst of all, she'd left our son alone to do it. That night, as Landon slept and Vivian retreated to the guest room without a word, I sat at the kitchen table with that box in front of me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. There's a difference between anger and resolve. Anger burns fast. It yells, it breaks things, it demands a fight. I didn't feel angry anymore. That part had burned itself out the moment I held my son at the sheriff's office. His little fingers gripping mine with a fear I'd never seen in him before. Resolve, though, that's different. It's cold. Quiet. It walks slowly and calculates every step. That's where I was now. I stayed up that entire night, sitting at the kitchen table with a notepad and a pen, trying to piece together what I needed to do. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want a scene. I wanted clarity, accountability, and most of all, I wanted to protect Landon. Vivian didn't say a word when she saw me in the morning. She avoided eye contact, busied herself in the laundry room, then left the house around noon without saying where she was going. Part of me hoped she would say something, anything, a confession, a lie, even an apology. But silence? That told me everything. I started with our bank. I'd never needed to monitor our finances before. We had joint accounts, a shared budget, and for the most part, we both trusted each other to stay within boundaries. But now, everything had to be questioned. I logged into the online portal and downloaded the full transaction history from the past 3 months. At first glance, nothing jumped out. Grocery stores, gas stations, online purchases from places like Amazon and Etsy. But when I filtered for charges over $100 and cross-checked them with dates I knew I was away on missions, a pattern started to emerge. One hotel in particular came up 3 times, the Juniper Ridge Inn. A quiet, boutique place on the outskirts of town. Cozy, off-grid, private. I'd never been there with her. I checked the dates. All 3 lined up with times I was on multi-day assignments in the mountains. She'd booked the rooms under her name, paid with our joint credit card, and never once mentioned a business retreat or planning session. There were also cash withdrawals. Small enough to slip under the radar but frequent enough to raise a flag. 75 here, 50 there, sometimes twice in a week. Vivian almost never used cash. She said it made her feel disorganized. I could only guess what it was used for. I screen captured everything. Every receipt. Every charge. I uploaded it all to a private folder on the cloud, labeled simply, Custody Prep. Next, I checked the home security camera. We'd had it installed a year ago after a few car break-ins in the neighborhood. The camera was mounted above the front door, motion-triggered, with night vision and 2 weeks of rolling footage. I opened the app, pulled up the timeline, and scrolled back to the night Vivian left with her overnight bag. There she was, 9:48 p.m. exiting the house in a gray coat, hair tied up, dragging her wheeled suitcase down the porch steps. She looked back at the house once. Not long. Not guilty. Just a glance, like someone checking to see if the lights were off. Then, 2 minutes later, movement triggered the camera again. A man. He walked briskly up to the door, head down. The resolution was poor in the low light, but I could see enough. Tall, athletic build, short brown hair. He entered the house using the side door. I recognized the movement from how the security light flickered behind him. The side door doesn't have a camera, but it does have a keypad. I set the code myself. Only 3 people knew it: me, Vivian, and my brother Nathan. And this man wasn't Nathan. I replayed the footage 5 times. On the 6th, I paused it on the moment he turned his face slightly toward the light. Evan. It had to be. The jawline, the height, the casual way he moved like he belonged there. I sat back, the confirmation settling over me like a final stone placed on top of a sealed grave. From there, things moved quickly. I called my attorney the next morning, Claire Holloway. She came recommended by a friend in the county search and rescue board, someone who had gone through a similar custody situation. Claire was sharp, efficient, the kind of person who didn't waste a breath on sympathy unless it served a strategy. I told her everything. She asked for documents. I shared the financial records, the security footage, and Landon's police report from the night he was found on the road. Her eyes narrowed at that last one. She left your minor child alone in the house after dark? I nodded. And he wandered nearly 2 miles, in freezing temperatures? Yes. She's lucky you didn't press charges. I'm not trying to ruin her, I said quietly. I just want to make sure Landon stays safe. That's all. Claire looked at me for a moment, then leaned back in her chair. You're doing the right thing. This isn't emotional, this is protective. Document everything, from now until the hearing. So I did. I started tracking everything. What time Vivian came home, when she left, whether she interacted with Landon, how long she stayed in the same room with him. It was colder than anything I'd ever done, but I stopped thinking of her as my wife. She was a subject now, a factor in a custody case. Landon started asking fewer questions. He didn't bring up the night he walked out, but he clung to me more tightly. He'd ask if I was leaving, even if I was just stepping out to take the trash. One night, while we were brushing our teeth together, he looked up at me through the mirror and said, "Daddy, are you going to stay this time?" It shattered me. I crouched down, looked him in the eyes. "I'm not going anywhere. Promise." He nodded slowly, then leaned into my chest and hugged me like it was the only thing keeping him upright. By the end of the week, Vivian's behavior started shifting. She got quieter, more distant. She'd leave the house with her phone clutched tight, her overnight bag still packed. She didn't even try to pretend she was heading to a work meeting anymore. No more fake reasons, just absence. It was like she thought we'd stopped noticing. But I was documenting everything. Every disappearance, every missed dinner, every night she didn't check on our son. When I served her the emergency custody paperwork, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked down at the envelope in her hand and whispered, "You're really doing this?" "I have to," I said. "For Landon. For me. For the truth that no longer needed proving." A week after filing the emergency custody request, things felt quieter, but not settled. Vivian had moved her things into the guest room, but the house still carried her like perfume clings to old fabric. Every time she passed through the hall, I could smell whatever scent she wore when she went out to see him. And she was always going out, always wearing that soft, expensive makeup she never used when it was just us. She didn't fight the paperwork. Not yet. Maybe she thought it wasn't real. Maybe she believed, in that small corner of her mind that still liked to imagine herself innocent, that I was bluffing. That I was bluffing when I told her the sheriff had called. Bluffing when I showed her the hotel receipts. Bluffing when I said I had video footage. She stopped looking me in the eye after that. But the silence didn't last long. Late one night, I received an email with no subject line, no message body. Just an address I didn't recognize. A Gmail account. The sender name was generic. Info. Attachments 0 4-inch. And for a moment, I hovered my mouse over the delete button, thinking it was spam. But something in me hesitated. There was an attachment. A zip folder. I scanned it for malware, checked the metadata, it looked clean. So I opened it. Inside were 23 files. *TS, PDFs, scans of ID cards, and financial documents. The first file I opened was a *T of a dating app profile. My stomach dropped. It was Evan. His face unmistakable. Posed, charming, tilted grin like he was born to play harmless. But the name wasn't Evan. It said Marco, age 38, location, Eugene. Different city, different name. I clicked the next file. Another profile. Same face. This time going by Sean D. This one listed a completely different job, freelance wealth strategist. A third one used Daniel, claiming to be a consultant for nonprofits. Each account had the same bio template. Divorced, emotionally intelligent, looking for connection and transparency. He used buzzwords: empathy, healing, rebuilding, all laced with just enough vulnerability to disarm a lonely woman. My pulse climbed as I flipped through the rest. There were chat logs, long, manipulative conversations with other women. Most of them followed the same pattern. He'd meet them on dating apps or LinkedIn, usually by posing as someone in finance or fundraising. Then he'd ask for help, small favors, document reviews, tips on applying for grant funds. Sometimes he asked them to sign things just to smooth the process. Buried in the folder were scans of utility bills and insurance forms. Several bore Vivian's name. She'd sent them to him, her real address, her ID, even Landon's insurance provider. I sat there, frozen. The world had already shifted once under my feet, but this was a different kind of earthquake. It wasn't just cheating anymore. It was fraud. And Vivian? She'd given him everything he needed to open accounts under our names. I scrolled to the bottom of the email. Nothing. No sign-off, no sender name. Just one final file. A typed document titled, Fraud Complaint Template. Whoever sent this hadn't just wanted me to know. They wanted me to act. I called Claire, my attorney, first thing in the morning. She read through the documents slowly, methodically, and said, "This changes everything. Can we prove she knew?" I asked. "She doesn't have to know," Claire replied. "If her negligence enabled him to access private documents, that's enough for liability. The custody case already favors you, but this moves it into federal territory." I didn't know whether to be relieved or horrified. Part of me wanted to believe Vivian had no idea, that she had been seduced not just romantically, but strategically, that he targeted her like a conman picks the easiest mark. Isolated, overwhelmed, emotionally vulnerable. But part of me also knew she should have known better. She worked in community engagement. She coordinated events, managed donor lists, helped write grant applications. She should have known better than to share sensitive financials with someone she was romantically involved with. But she didn't. Or worse, she did. And that made her complicit. We handed everything over to Claire, who in turn passed it to a contact at the FBI's cyber division. I didn't know how long it would take to investigate. I didn't care. I wasn't doing it for revenge. I was doing it because Landon deserved to grow up in a house that wasn't built on lies. A few days later, Vivian must have realized the shift. She came home early from work, early enough that I was still helping Landon with his spelling workbook at the table. She stood in the doorway, clutching her purse like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "I need to talk to you," she said. Landon looked up. I nodded to him gently. "Finish this page, buddy. I'll be right over there." Vivian and I stepped into the next room. The living room, neutral ground. She stood with her back to the window. Outside, the wind was picking up again. Storm clouds rolling in over the pine trees, like the world was mirroring the quiet dread inside the house. "What's going on?" she asked. "You've been cold." I didn't answer right away. I looked at her face, familiar and distant all at once. Her mouth twitched like she was fighting the urge to defend herself before she even heard the charge. "I got an email," I said finally. "Anonymous. With proof that Evan, Mark, Sean, whatever name he's using this week, isn't just sleeping with married women. He's stealing from them. Financial documents, IDs, bank info." Her face paled. "I don't," she started. I have documents with your name on them, I said, cutting her off. Your name, your address, our son's medical records, sent to him, scanned from your phone. You gave him everything he needed. She opened her mouth again, but no words came out. You didn't just cheat on me, I said, voice low. You endangered our son. You gave a stranger access to our lives. I didn't know, she said, voice cracking. Josh, I swear. He said he was helping me apply for a financial aid grant. For Landon's future. He talked about long-term planning, investment protections. Did you ever once stop and think, maybe I should talk to my husband about that first? Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean to. But you did, I said. You meant to lie, maybe not about all of it, but about enough. She broke then, shoulders shaking, face buried in her hands. I didn't comfort her, not because I hated her, but because that version of me was gone. The man who would have hugged her through anything, who would have blamed himself, who would have forgiven her before the full story was told. That man didn't exist anymore. When she finally looked up at me, eyes red, mascara streaked, she said, "What happens now?" I gave her the only answer I had. That depends on what the investigators find. But you're lucky, because I've kept your name out of the report so far. Her face shifted, part confusion, part relief. I did it for Landon, I added. Not for you. The room was quiet for a long time after that. When I returned to the kitchen, Landon looked up from his workbook and smiled. Can we build Legos later? He asked. I ruffled his hair. Absolutely. In court, I laid it all out, photos, financial records, video footage, and the sheriff's report about Landon. Claire presented it calmly, fact by fact. Vivian didn't argue. She looked exhausted, like someone drowning in a mess she never thought would catch up to her. The judge granted me full custody. Vivian was limited to supervised visits, twice a month. She barely looked at me when the order was read. Evan had vanished. Word was the feds were after him now. I didn't feel victorious, just relieved. Landon was safe, and that was everything. Vivian moved out of state. She sent the occasional postcard or toy for Landon, but I kept her at arm's length for his sake. Landon bounced back faster than I expected. He asked fewer questions, slept easier. We rebuilt slowly. Weekend hikes, Lego towers, nature shows before bed. The house grew quieter, but not empty, peaceful. In time, the anger dulled, replaced by something stronger. I'd lost the illusion but gained something real. No more lies, just me and my son. Healing, building, day by day.